Tony Sutton is the chairman of the Minnesota Republican Party. Tony, is there anything the chairman can do to look at a huge field like the Republicans now have and say, there's about 3 or 4 electable people here, and why don't the rest of you go away? Or do you just let them brawl each other for a few months and see who comes out on top?
Well, that's right. Frankly, what I want to have is a very vigorous endorsing contest. I think that competition is good. I think that the cream will rise to the surface. I mean, we don't know, we don't know the result, which is why I guess we run the race here, is to see who would be our candidate, who would get endorsed. But a vigorous endorsing contest with a big field is good for the party. It's getting us more media attention. As our candidates, they do press releases and the media events, and they travel the state. They're all getting out there talking about Republican principles, and so I look at them as, like little communications ambassadors talking about the party. I think having lots of candidates is a good thing right now. We've got a straw poll for governor coming up October 3rd at the state convention, or off-year state convention in St. Paul, and that may narrow the field, because right now we've got 9 people that are declared candidates with some others waiting in the wings, and this may narrow the field a little bit. But right now I think it's good to have a bunch of people running.
Are all 9 candidates going to address the convention?
Yes, but they're only going to get 5 minutes.
I was going to say you're going to have to put a time limit on them, right?
Yeah, no, I told them that brevity is the soul of wit, and that 5 minutes is the maximum they could have, and otherwise we'd be there all day.
This is a very odd place politically, Minnesota. We are looked at as an extremely liberal state. The Republicans have only carried the presidential election in this state once since Dwight Eisenhower, yet Republicans have done very well running for governor and held the legislature for a lot of years. Kind of a strange mix of voters out there in this state. I mean, at one time we had Paul Wellstone and Rod Grams in the U.S. Senate, for God's sakes. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense.
With Jesse Ventura as governor at the same time. Yeah,
yes, yes.
Well, you know what? It makes it interesting. It makes it interesting, that's for sure. I go to national Republican meetings and people talk to me about Minnesota. There's always something, it's always something, whether it's the Franken-Coleman recount or Jesse Ventura or whatever. It's always something in Minnesota. But I think that's because, this state is not as liberal as people think. I mean, you get outside the core urban areas, you go to the suburbs, you go to greater Minnesota. I mean, people are fiscally conservative. A lot of people are socially conservative, Patrick, and so they live their lives that way. And I think we as Republicans, when we're good, when we're successful or good at articulating our message, we do better. A guy like Tim Pawlenty, for example, when he ran for governor in 2002 and 2006, again had the right tone and right pitch for Minnesota. He had a good message, and the Democrats, the message of big government, more taxes. I mean, people are starting to get the joke that we're out of money, that we can't tax our way out of this. You can't love employment and hate employers. You can't tax the tar out of people who provide jobs and expect jobs to exist. And so people are getting that. And I'm actually really bullish on our chances here in 2010.
Tony, can you stay with us for a while? We're going to
Absolutely.
take a break here. Tony Sutton, the chairman of the Minnesota Republican Party. Here's Kenny with traffic. Reusse and Company. Wednesday, September 23rd, we have Tony Sutton, the chairman of the Minnesota Republican Party. Tony, there is speculation that Minnesota is going to lose a congressional seat after the 2010 census, go from 8 to 7. If that was the case, do you know when would an election take place with only 7 House members rather than 8?
Well, that would be in 2012.
So it would happen immediately then, huh?
Right, and it would be. I think we've had 8 seats since the 1940s at least. So I think it's been a long time.
We had 9. I thought into the 50s we had 9, and then
you might be right. We did have 9 for a long time. This would be a radical change to the political map. There's no doubt about it. And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope they count every nose in Minnesota. So that doesn't happen, because I'd hate to see the state lose representation.
But I was going to say we spent a lot of time talking about the governor and the national seats, but that this would make the legislative election of 2010 more important than ever because they do the gerrymandering, right?
Yes, they do. We've got, from a political standpoint, as Republicans, we need to at least maintain control of the governorship and hopefully get control of at least one of the houses of the legislature so that we can have a say in this redistricting process. At least the governor's veto pen threat to keep the redistricting honest. If the Democrats have full control of both houses of the legislature and the governorship, we're going to just be gerrymandered into a couple enclaves or something.
Well, the governor does have veto power over congressional redistricting. I wasn't aware of that. Okay. Because in Texas, the Republican, Tom DeLay, had control of everything, and he did a fine job of gerrymandering down there. So remember when the Democrats in the legislature went and hid in New Mexico, trying not to let him have a quorum. So
I don't think I'll come to that here. I think Minnesotans are a little more sensible. I do think, though, that if we, you might recall back in the early 90s when the Democrats controlled the legislature and Carlson kind of Arnie Carlson muffed that veto, that we were stuck with a Democrat map. And, for the legislature, and we weren't able to take control until 1998 because of that.
When was the map last changed?
The map we're operating under right now was put into effect in the 2002 elections.
Okay.
And, that's what we're operating under right now.
So you think it's still, from what best you can tell, iffy 50-50 whether we're going to lose a seat or not?
I hate to say this, if I was to bet, I would bet that we would lose a seat.
Mm-hmm.
Just because based on what I'm being told from what the census and demographers are projecting, but it's very close. But I'm sort of in my own mind planning on that we lose a seat, and if we don't, great.
Oh, I think don't worry if the DFL controls everything. Michelle will get a lot of votes in North Minneapolis. Don't worry about her. I'd like to see that line. It'll come right down the road. That'll be an interesting congressional district. So, are you at peace yet with the Franken-Coleman result? When you see Senator Franken, do your knuckles still turn white, or are you doing okay with that?
Well, I guess I'm doing okay. The only moment that I had was I was walking into the state fair, and kind of kitty corner from where the haunted house is was Al Franken's booth. And I thought, well, this is kind of ironic or appropriate or I don't know what, but it says United States Senator Al Franken. And I remember when I was a kid and Al Franken was on Saturday Night Live, and I'm like, this is some kind of a gag or a joke, but no, this is reality. I mean, this guy's a United States Senator. I mean, he's starting to make Jesse Ventura look pretty good. So I'm over it, but mentally. But what we're doing is making sure that those sorts of things can't happen again. I told the staff we can't win an election by less than 10,000 votes. These guys are going to figure out some way to rob it.
Well, so you're not quite over it then. Say, Jim Ramstad kind of hinting just a little bit this weekend that maybe he'll consider being drafted for governor. Certainly would be a strong candidate, but it doesn't seem like he's ready to dive in there.
Well, running for governor, I think Jim would be a great candidate. I just think that running for governor is something that you got to have the fire in the belly, and I think Jim's probably trying to decide if that's something that he has the desire to do, because it's a full-time job to run for governor between raising money and traveling the state. And Minnesota's a big state. When you start, driving or even trying to fly around, it's a big state, and so it's a full-time job to run for governor, and whether it's Jim Ramstad or anybody, it really takes folks who have that desire are going to know that they're going to have to quit their jobs and do this full-time.
Thank you, Tony. Tony Sutton, the chairman of the Minnesota Republican Party, was with us this morning, and it's going to be that congressional thing is something that people aren't talking about. But if you lose a seat, the legislature can draw some funny lines if they have complete control.